My name is Shelley Homer, and I am ALS. I'm also a wife, daughter, sister, mom, grandma, and friend. I've lived way past my expiration date. Having lived with ALS for 9 years, I'm incredibly grateful to be alive. I'm an ALS advocate and veteran of the U.S. Navy, and I co-chair the ALS veteran team. Let's talk about veterans living with ALS. Steve, will you speak for me?
These are Shelley's words. 1 in 16 Americans is a veteran. 1 in 6 people living with ALS is a veteran. Let me repeat that. 1 in 16 Americans is a veteran. Yet 1 in 6 people living with ALS is a veteran. A recent study in military medicine found that the incidence is even higher in post 9/11 veterans. They are up to 10 times more likely to be diagnosed with ALS than those who never served in the military. More veterans have died from ALS since 9/11 than the number of service members who have died in the Gulf War and the Afghanistan War combined. Brigadier General Thomas R.
General
Mick, right, was diagnosed with ALS along with 4 members of his Air Force squadron. In his 2007 congressional testimony, he said, "If these soldiers were dying on the field rather than quietly at home as a consequence of their service, we would leave no stone unturned. We would use the best existing resources and programs to make sure that they had whatever they needed to survive. To ensure that no man or woman is left behind." Now the VA assumes responsibility and provides stability and medical care. There are few VA medical centers who do quite well at this, but the vast majority of veterans diagnosed with ALS are told to quietly go home and die. No more. The I AM ALS Veterans team is working with the Veterans Health Administration to ensure that the VA directs the attention and resources required to provide all veterans living with ALS equitable and quality care regardless of their zip code. Let's leave no stone unturned. Let's use the best existing resources and programs to make sure every veteran living with ALS has whatever they need to survive, to ensure that no man or woman is left behind.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Jim Pluzogan. I'm really honored to be here today speaking to all of you. Many of you I've met virtually, certainly Shelley, all these people, I see people now that have been so inspiring to us in the first few months of our walk with ALS. So I'm very honored to be here and inspired by all of you. I'm a recently diagnosed, recently retired pediatrician from Charlottesville, Virginia. I was diagnosed in November of this past year with ALS. I'm a J up there on the flag, the hill. And now in my retirement, I am launching the next session of my career as an advocate for improved treatments and eventually a cure for ALS. I am told, especially in this town, that it's never too late to become a lobbyist.
My name is William Pluzogan. I'm Jim's son, and you're from New York, and here as a representative of our whole family, which is up and down the East Coast and as far west as, California. So we are here today in spirit and here with all of you. And last week, or 2 weeks ago, we gathered in Charlottesville, which is where I grew up and my parents live, to kick off what we are calling the Hummingbird Fund and a bunch of efforts at advocacy for patients with ALS in Central Virginia and around the country. And our whole family was there, and many of my dad's former patients and their families, many with medical complexity themselves. And it was a really inspiring event. And so I am dedicated, and we're dedicated as a family to continuing that momentum. And one of the first things that my dad sort of quoted during that event was John Lewis's famous quip about making good trouble. And so that's, I think, with the spirit of what we're here today to do. So I think we want to make some noise today for all the families facing the urgent reality of ALS. Here to remind ourselves and our representatives that we can find a cure for this disease, that we can support each other, that we can make this month and this year and the year after turning points in the fight for effective treatments for ALS. The United States federal government is the most powerful organization in human history, I would argue. And as a nation, our achievements in science and technology are unparalleled. Every time and again, great progress has transpired against all odds. Progress that bends what's possible with overwhelming resources and overwhelming action. It's the kind of progress that defies timelines and grim prognoses. It's all possible. And it is our hope here today that will transpire sooner than later.
On June 5th, 1981, the first death from HIV was reported in the United States. My wife, Peggy, was working on the Upper East Side of New York taking care of young urban professionals who had what was called the wasting disease. I was working a few blocks away at a methadone maintenance clinic, caring for folks who were emerging with similar rare and lethal-ish diseases. At that time, the science of HIV was already almost a decade old. Howard Temin had already discovered reverse transcriptase and in fact had received the Nobel Prize in 1975 for his work. But the science of HIV treatments lacked a key data set. The voices, the stories of people with HIV. In the 1990s, everything changed. The people with HIV and their loved ones became visible, inspired, and activated.
In 1995, President Clinton hosted the first White House HIV conference. A year later, the first antiretroviral treatment. And during the following year, deaths from HIV dropped nearly 50% in 1 year. The point is that diseases like HIV and ALS and COVID-19 need people and stories and movements. And they're not unsolvable, sad dilemmas. Effective treatments can be developed at the pace of people. The pace of people who need them and need them most.
With success like the Act for ALS, we are making progress. But we cannot let Congress forget. We can't wait. The Act for ALS will require vigilant legislative follow-through by our ALS community. Likewise, we need to advocate for the FDA to approve AMX 35, a safe and effective treatment that should become a standard part of the ALS cocktail.
There's much cause for hope. We're hopeful because we have each other. There's a tremendous hope that springs from unified action, like the one we have today. Let's carry this forward on behalf of all the names on all of the flags And on behalf of the families and the loved ones, and all of the names, families and the loved ones of those on those flags, let's go and make some good trouble.
We've all been there. The ALS diagnosis and date etched into our brains. June 6th, 2017 for us. Shock, tears, fear. How do we tell our kids? My husband Dan and I were stunned. We thought it was a pinched nerve in his hand. We were enjoying retirement, visiting with our kids, grandkids, playing golf, lunching with buddies, traveling son. Dan was a research nut on his iPad, always sending jokes and research of the latest medical updates to the kids and grandkids. Life was good. But now Dan did what he did best. He started to research. Family members jumped in and helped us to try to find the best treatments and doctors. Radicava had just been approved, so we were really hopeful for a cure soon. From Fort Myers, we went to University of Chicago, and then to Dr. Merit Sukovich at Mass General, a saint. The family members were unable to qualify for the brainstorm stem cell treatments here in the United States. With the help of unbelievably generous family members and Dr. Merritt, we traveled to South Korea for treatments, and they worked, along with Riluzole and nutritional supplements, exercise programs, B12 shots, Ibutylast, Radicava IV infusions, which I'm sure, like many of you, I administered. I'm not a nurse. I'm an English teacher. I was scared to death each time. We tried everything that Dr. Merritt's team threw at us and everything else that we could find. He was holding his own, just slowly progressing, when Brian and Sandra founded I AM ALS in Chicago. We were so incredibly hopeful and still are. As you all know, finding a cure in even the hope of a few months can make a difference in your life. Early 2019, pneumonia hit, and we suddenly found ourselves progressing rapidly. We had a hospital bed, a second ventilator, a Hoyer lift, feeding tube, word banking software and equipment. You know the route. It was overwhelming. As his muscles deteriorated, I tried desperately to maintain his dignity. And our kids, grandkids, and family were with us constantly to help. They were giving him such joy by telling old stories and joking about pranks and fun they'd had. It was a blessing. His buddies would show up every week and take him in his wheelchair to the pub for lunch. He couldn't eat, but he loved the camaraderie and the feeling of normalcy it gave him. Throughout this battle, though, Dan repeatedly told me that the most important thing to him was to show our grandkids what it was to fight adversity, truly fight adversity. And he certainly did that. It was a horrific nightmare experience, and as of December 1st, 2019, he was free. I found out about a few short weeks after Dan died that I had cancer. Completely treatable, thank God. But then COVID hit. That time inside helped me to process what had happened to us, just what had hit us. And now we find that our family is beginning to tell Grampsy stories and DJ stories. With a smile now. It took me almost 2 years to be able to speak about any of this. But with the help of the fantastic people at I AM ALS, I'm speaking out now. Our 4 kids are here with me today because we are so angry that people still don't have access to hope. People are dying. There's no cure. So why shouldn't they have access to treatment that may not be allowed yet, or drugs that are out there but we can't get? Why are people still traveling overseas? We are the greatest country in the world right here. As you guys know, live with ALS for just one day, and you'll understand immediately and completely The devastation and depression of knowing that there's nothing available to you is heart-wrenching. So I'm here today with my kids, asking you to remember in honor of the memory of Dan Joyce and all ALS victims, and please make change happen. We don't even have 1 minute left to waste. Thank you.
Hey, good morning, everyone. My name is Patricia Manhart. And I'm not even 2 sentences in. And I'm from Ohio. Ohio has the second highest incidence of ALS in the nation, second only to Michigan. I used to be an amateur runner. I ran several 5K races. I actually won a 5K for my age bracket once because there was a winter storm and there wasn't many people. So, good for me. In 2018, I ran a half marathon. I was in good shape. I had healthy eating habits, no smoking or drugs. Then I slipped and crushed my toe. I ended up having 2 surgeries on my foot, one in 2018 and one in 2019. I then began having symptoms and was diagnosed with ALS on July 23rd, 2020. But I'm actually one of the lucky ones because I'm still here. I'm still here even though it has been almost 2 years since my diagnosis. Not only that, I have not lost my ability to speak or breathe or swallow, and I am not yet paralyzed. It's not an exaggeration when people say that they are diagnosed and their doctors tell them to go home, get their affairs in order, and write their will. That is exactly what happens. The doctor has no information to give you that will help you live. We need to change that. We need to believe in the FDA and that they will begin approving the numerous drugs that are safe and have shown promise. Some drugs actually show more than promise, as some trial participants witnessed themselves beginning to reverse their symptoms. You would think that as soon as these results were witnessed, that these drugs would be sped through the approval process and stop the constant deaths of this 100% fatal disease of ALS. But there's a lot of paperwork that goes into this. We need that paperwork to be streamlined. We need these drugs to be approved, even though they aren't a silver bullet. We need something that will help immediately. We need urgency in the approval process. We need accelerated approval. We cannot wait till we find the silver bullet for the disease because we are dying today. Because of the heterogeneity of ALS, there will most likely never be one drug that helps every single person with ALS. That would be like saying there should be one chemotherapy treatment that will help everyone with any kind of cancer. It just won't happen. Just 1 second, sorry. It's the meds that do that, make me have dry mouth. Okay, let me paint a picture for you of our lives. We all have found ourselves, along with 30,000 other Americans, on a battlefield. I look to my right, and I see young mothers and young fathers, and sons and daughters and grandparents. I even see children. I look to my left, and I see people of every race, every religion, and every nationality. We are stuck out here on the battlefield where every day we lose a piece of ourselves, a piece of the person we used to be when we could breathe and talk and swallow and walk and hug our family. There was a beloved man named Travis Luck who had ALS, and he died on April 20th of this year. Travis, just like us, wanted to fight this disease, but as he told his wife, he had no ammunition and he had no weapons. This isn't a battle, it is a slaughter. We are being invaded and killed with no defenses. We cannot run for cover and we cannot retreat. Can you imagine walking into a war zone knowing that you have a 100% chance of death because no one gave you even a Kevlar vest to protect you? You would have nothing, not even hope. Those with ALS need hope. They need a chance. Even if it's a 1% chance, even if you only have one Kevlar vest to hand out, do it. If one life can be saved, it is worth it. Not only will that one person be saved, but 30,000 others will now have hope. We are here today asking the FDA to give us the weapons, give us the ammunition to fight this horrible disease. We are worth it. Please do the right thing, the humane thing, and do it quickly with regulatory flexibility and urgency. There is a critical unmet need here. Please encourage drug companies to request approval. Be swift in approving Brainstorm's Neurone, Nuvivo's NP001, Biogen's Tofersen, Amylyx's AMX0035, and any other drug or treatment that will give us a chance, a fighting chance, because we are dying waiting. As my friend Michelle Lorenz said, we need drugs in bodies, and we need hope in souls. Thank you very much.
Wow, I'm so excited to be here, and it's really wonderful to see all of you. I have to say, your smiling faces are making me really, really happy right now. Thanks so much for that, and thanks so much for being here. Because it's ALS, a lot of us have broken hearts, and some of us have broken bodies. That's not what I see when I look at all of you. Look at all of you. I see your brilliant minds, your caring hearts, and the strength that you never knew you had until ALS came into your world. I see courage, perseverance, and persistence, and not just in our Queen Shelley. I see perseverance or persistence in all of you. I see you for the relentless, badass, mountain mover advocates that you are. And the good news is that so do our congressional leaders. So do our physicians, pharma, ALS organizations, even the Major League Baseball. They see us. We are being seen and heard like we have never been seen and heard before. 10 years ago, when my husband Tim was diagnosed with ALS, this space was really different. Most people didn't know what ALS was. We were ignored as a community. There was only a handful of clinical trials. And we definitely had no hope. Today is a different story. We continue to build our army of advocates, and we work together with other ALS organizations and groups. And you know what? We're getting shit done. I'm glad I left that in. I wasn't thinking I was going to do that, but okay. So we've helped pass 2 important pieces of legislation in 2 years. And many here in DC thought it would be impossible, but we made it possible, and we did it in a big way. We helped pass the Social Security Disability Insurance Act in 2020 and the Act for ALS in 2021. And according to our amazing government affair advisors that I love from Forbes and Tate and Winning Strategies, they've never seen anything like our grassroots advocacy. These bills moved so quickly, accumulating so many co-sponsors so fast, our congressional leaders had to take notice. In fact, Act for ALS was one of, if not the most popular bill in 2021. And the last time I checked, it was ranked around 60th in the top 10 most co-sponsored bill in the history of all of Congress. How about that, right? So this is our time. We've got great momentum, and we must keep working together to change the ALS landscape. We want people living with ALS today to have more treatment options and hope. And we're not going to stop until ALS is treatable. If you're not already connected with I AM ALS, please check out us at iamals.org. My name's Deb Paust, and I'm one of the co-chairs of the Legislative Affairs team. We have the most amazing advocates and team members. They will inspire you, and they will help you learn to advocate for what's important to you. We all have different things that are important to us, and that's what we're about, advocating for what's important to you. We've been building relationships with your representative and senators, and we need you to join us so we can move forward and faster on the ALS clock. Right now, we're building our constituent database, so you can sign up online, and it's the I AM ALS Legislative Affairs team. Help the I AM ALS Legislative Affairs team. Or find me today, or find me on social media, and let's get you on the list so you can support future ALS efforts. We always say that this ALS group is one we never want to be part of, but it's where you find the most amazing people, and it's true. You are my friends, and you feel like my family. I feel blessed that I get to advocate with you. You're my heroes. You inspire me and strengthen me each and every day, and I just want to say thank you. Okay, so if you ever doubted your impact, I want to tell you about my friend Maria Medeviv. She also wants to express her appreciation to all of you. Her only child is her son Marius, who was diagnosed at age 34. He's 39 now. Maria and her husband work full-time, and they're the full-time caregivers for their son. Maria doesn't have time to advocate, so she reaches out to us so we can help tell her son's story to her legislators, and because she wants to try to save his life. Marius is her world. He's an amazing young man, a former soccer player, and is desperate for a chance at promising therapies like Neuron. She is beyond grateful for what you do, and she just wanted you to know how much she appreciates you. Thank you.
It's great to see so many faces this morning, so many smiling, beautiful faces. I had the privilege of meeting a few of you yesterday when we got to set up the flags. We are a small but mighty group on this journey, and we have to stick together. ALS can be very isolating. I'm here this morning with my husband, the cute thing over there, who is currently being a bag holder for me. And I have to say, it never feels good to be left out, but as some folks have said, this is one club we never wanted to be part of, and I think we can all agree on that. Having said that, ALS has taken a lot from my family and from all of us. You can never take away our love and hope. All have our stories. After many years together, my husband and I decided to get married. Both said it was one of the best decisions we ever made. After all, many people are never lucky enough to find their person. We had jobs we loved, we were traveling the world, we were active in our community, enjoying the life we worked so hard to build together. I didn't know I'd be quite so emotional reading this story. The year we got married was full of our greatest highs and lows. I had thyroid cancer 1 month after our wedding. My husband got his dream job, and I became pregnant. When I was 6 months pregnant, my husband was diagnosed with ALS. We were devastated. Fast forward to today, we have a 6-year-old who is a very tender caretaker to his dad and has a pretend hospital in his room with stuffed animals on ventilators, needing suctions, and all other kinds of emergencies. Some days and nights are incredibly tough. I think everyone here knows that. We live with this disease front and center 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. There is never a vacation from this disease. It is so cruel, and it is so undignified. But we are thankful for each day together and the many blessings and the many seemingly small life moments that have become significant and special moments. We're laser focused on what's most important. Thank you to those living with ALS who are here today and those who aren't. Your courage, your grace know no bounds. You dig deeper every day than some ever dig in their lifetimes. Please know that you are loved and you are seen for the beautiful humans you are, and you're an inspiration every day. A special thank you to my husband, who has been an inspiration to me for 20 years. Life looks a little bit different than we imagined, but we're so thankful to still be here together. Have him by my side. Those whom we have lost to ALS, you will be in our hearts forever, and we will continue to fight hard for you, on your behalf, for you, and for those who come after you. Thank you to those caring for someone with ALS. It's an incredibly challenging and heart-wrenching role that requires much patience and love. There are many beautiful life moments sprinkled in. To those working on a cure, and a better quality of life for those of us who face this cruel disease, if our world can come together to develop a COVID vaccine, I know we can bring brain trust together to figure out how to help our loved ones so that future 6-year-olds get to hear their dad's voice, play catch together, go on bike rides, and get hugs. Thank you to everyone for the many roles you each play and for being here today and for never ever losing hope.
Well, I'm used to public speaking, but this is something that's so personal. My second husband, his name was, and I swore I wasn't going to cry. Curtis Kesselring was my husband for 11 years. He was diagnosed with bulbar onset ALS July 27th, 2015. We cried for 3 months as he lost his ability to eat and talk. 6 months after his diagnosis, Kurt had lost 60 pounds and was adamant about no tubes, until our 6-year-old grandson cried to his dad that all he wanted for Christmas was for his baby to be cured. Right after Christmas, Kurt got the feeding tube. My grandson, who was 5 and 8, lost his best friend, his pappy, and was holding his hand when he died at our house on October 7th, 2017. And I might add that 2 months after that, my mother passed away on Christmas Eve. My purpose here today is not just to honor my late husband, but also to make more people aware of bulbar onset ALS, which attacks the throat and mouth area first instead of the legs or arms. The first symptoms are the inability to eat and talk my husband, he started slurring his words all the time. People thought it was because of some medication he was on. And then every time we would go out to eat on vacation in June, he was like, "Do you think I've eaten enough?" He was really having a hard time. And then when we got back, I called the doctor. 2, frontal lobe dementia and personality changes add a whole nother dimension to caring for your loved ones with ALS. My husband definitely had both. He even became aggressive towards me sometimes, and the doctor was concerned about it. 3, caregivers who are typically family members suffer from PTSD for the rest of their lives due to the constant stress, particularly at the end of their loved one's life. I still have very little memory of my husband's funeral. And I have flashbacks all the time. I had to get rid of his recliner because all I kept doing was seeing it and watching him in it asleep with the ALS. And while working on my PhD in special education, I did some extensive research on autism. which according to numerous studies is brought on by childhood vaccines. And I know I'm going to say some controversial things here, but I'm saying it to, food for thought. I got to thinking about how it's a proven fact that veterans are twice as likely to develop ALS than the average person. It dawned on me, and by the way, in the PhD studies, I question everything that anybody says. Anyway, it dawned on me that military members get extensive vaccines, particularly when deploying overseas. I challenge our government and scientists to bring to light the studies that have already been conducted regarding connection between ALS and vaccines. If you have any questions about it, I have stuff that I've printed out online about this whole issue. And I'm really, everybody here, I'm getting goosebumps. Are you getting goosebumps? I mean, you guys are so wonderful, and I'm just so thankful for everybody. It's too late for my husband, and his flag is in here somewhere. And by the way, being a widow really sucks. But it is possible to find love again, and I did. And I'm coming up on my first year of marriage to my new husband. Thank you so much.
Good morning, everyone. Weber's my maiden name, so I'm Cassandra Haddad, but sometimes it comes up as Weber in my email. It's an honor to be here with you today. I'm so thankful that my husband, Jason, and my 5-year-old twins, Lincoln and Frankie, can also be here with us to share this step of our journey. This story is for all of you, but it is most importantly for my children, because it's a story of resilience, it's a story of love, and most importantly, it's a story of hope. ALS feels hopeless, it feels dark, it feels lonely, but you and your loved ones and everyone else in this community are not alone. You will meet so many wonderful people, from patients and caregivers to advocates and care providers, like my personal ALS heroes, Dr. Colin Quinn and Dr. Katie Nicholson. My family's ALS story starts long ago. We have had at least 33 documented ALS family members since 1780, making my twins the potential 9th generation. Some families pass on genes for blue eyes or red hair. My family passes on a legacy of death. And it is my mission to end this legacy of death and replace it with a legacy of hope. As recently as the early 1990s, when my grandfather was diagnosed, he was given the famous line of, "There is nothing we can do." The SOD1 gene that causes ALS in my family was about to be discovered in just a few short years. But at the time of his diagnosis, there truly was nothing to do. And within a year, he was gone. We knew that ALS ran in our family, but even 15 years ago, when I would discuss my familial ALS with colleagues in healthcare, people would say to me, "That's not a thing. ALS just happens." There was such little understanding of ALS even within the medical community. As my mother's generation aged and nothing happened, we were lulled into a false sense of security. No one had undergone genetic testing yet because it was still in its infancy. And then my uncle Dwayne Lindsay, a Renaissance man who flew airplanes and scuba dived and traveled the world, suddenly had ALS. Over 20 years had passed since he had lost his father to ALS, and now he was staring down this beast. And our family's illusion of safety crumbled. But for the first time ever, this legacy of death had a glimmer of hope. Because not only did my uncle have genetic testing, which revealed the SOD1 gene, it revealed the exact variant, rapidly aggressive A5V. And that qualified him for the Valor trial to get the drug tofersen from Biogen. We truly believe that my uncle was getting active drug in the Valor trial because his progression stopped in its tracks. Finally, hope. And then, COVID. As the world spun into chaos, his trial was halted. He missed 3 doses of medication, rapidly progressed, and died. But don't despair, because again, hope. Thankfully, he gave the gift of knowledge to his siblings. He had them all promise to get tested. And true to the 50% chance of inheriting this gene, of which you only need 1 copy to get ALS from, 2 of the 4 siblings had the gene. My uncle, who is now gone, and my mother. There aren't strong enough words to describe the shock of getting her genetic testing results. Because even though we were an ALS family, we knew nothing. It had always happened in the men of our family, so my mother never dreamed she would have the gene. But she did, and the day her brother died, her ALS symptoms started. Like many with ALS, time to diagnosis is an ongoing issue. And by the time she admitted out loud what she knew in her heart, our desperate race to get her also into the Valor trial was too late. It was closed. I will simply sum up that part of our journey as an emotional roller coaster. But again, hope. The door to Valor was closed, but she was accepted to another trial. And my mother, with the aggressive variant, progressed slowly. And the emotional roller coaster continued, with the ups and downs of the tofersen trial and results, and the anxiously awaited tofersen expanded access program, or as our hero Dr. Quinn calls it, the emergency access program. So many twists and turns, upside downs, elation and despair, but still hope. Because of the work that you, the community, does, because of people like Lisa, Michelle and Mike, Brian and Sandra, we are getting drugs in bodies. We are forming new organizations, new care provider and advocacy groups. We are pushing the archaic and slow system to save our loved ones, to save us. And yes, it's a slow race against the dark horse of ALS, but for the first time ever, we are gaining. We have hope. Less than 2 years of my mom's journey, I started my own. Committed to do anything I can, I've joined 4 ALS studies. I will freely give of myself and my body for all of you, and most importantly, for my children. Because together, you and I, we will end this legacy of death. We will continue on with a legacy of hope. This will be the last generation we will sacrifice to ALS. We will sacrifice no more. We will hope, we will fight, and we will win.
Thank you, everyone, for being here today. It's truly an honor to stand here and fight with each and every one of you. My name is Nicole Segura, and I am an ALS widow. My husband Mike was diagnosed with ALS in 2015. He was one of the lucky ones and qualified for a promising clinical trial. Mike was one of 36 participants who received the drug Neuron in a phase 2 trial. Mike regained some function, but he was unable to get any more doses before the trial ended. Mike and I fought for continued access to treatment and to improve an archaic regulatory pathway. He died waiting for change in 2019. Early on, I had made a promise to Mike that I would stay in the fight. So fight on, I am, and I hope you will join me. We are making progress in fixing a broken system that is not equipped to evaluate heterogeneous diseases like ALS and does not match the speed at which this disease kills its victims. But we cannot rest. Not promising ALS therapies are on the horizon, but most people with the disease won't live to see them. People living with ALS need more access to promising therapies and a more flexible regulatory process that would accommodate the moderate advances needed to get closer to a cure. In September 2019, the Food and Drug Administration put out a new guidance on developing drugs for ALS, thought to be a step forward, modernizing development. The FDA reiterated its support for regulatory flexibility when applying standards to drugs for diseases with serious unmet medical needs. Now, we must demand that the agency live up to this promise. FDA routinely uses its broad regulatory flexibility in other diseases, such as oncology, Duchenne's, and others. Why not ALS? I ask again, why not ALS? Why not an 100% fatal disease? There are no ALS survivors, but there could be. At the June 2021 Energy and Commerce Health Subcommittee meeting on neurodegenerative diseases, FDA CDER Director Dr. Cavazzoni stated that the FDA has flexibility. It needs to approve therapies for diseases like ALS. Now is the time for the FDA to employ this flexibility, as it currently is reviewing AMX 0035 with a PDUFA date of June 30th. Dr. Cavazzoni repeatedly mentioned biomarkers and their importance in the accelerated approval pathway. There are 2 promising ALS therapies that have important biomarker evidence. First, tofersen, for the genetic SOD1 form of ALS, demonstrates target engagement and a significant decrease in neurofilament light, a marker for neurodegeneration. Second, NurOwn, demonstrates a strong and consistent biomarker data which are predictive of clinical response in the phase 3 trial. Span multiple disease pathways that are important to ALS and align with NurOwn's mechanism of action. We are seeing people in the NurOwn Expanded Access Program demonstrate clinically meaningful improvements in stabilization. We have seen numerous participants improve breathing and other functions that matter to them. Ask my friend Phil Green, or Sandy Morris, or Matt Klingenberg, Eric Stevens, or Josh Smith. NurOwn is helping them function and for longer. They are living proof that it works for some, and some is enough in ALS. Let me say that again. If therapy works for some, it's such a heterogeneous disease, it is enough. Phil, Sandy, Matt, Eric, and Josh are enough. Both tofersen and NurOwn are ideal candidates for the accelerated approval pathway, which allows access to patients living today while generating additional data. It is not an either-or situation. Regulatory flexibility allows for both access today and more data to support the approval through rigorous confirmatory post-approval trials. The FDA's guidance is an empty promise if it isn't accompanied by action. And people living with ALS need more flexible regulatory process, moving with urgency to help find treatments and cures for this deadly disease. The passage of Act for ALS, which is transformative law, signifies what can happen when the ALS community, Congress, NIH, and the FDA work collaboratively. Expanded access is becoming a reality in ALS for the very first time. However, expanded access is no replacement for FDA approvals. Leading ALS experts are all aligned that it will be a combination of therapies that will make this 100% fatal disease a treatable one. But how do we get those combinations? The FDA must approve the 3 therapies that are here now. They are ready and will open the door to more. This is where we start. We owe it to all of you living with ALS today to do everything in our power to provide access to promising therapies as quickly as possible, because you do not have the time to wait. In the words of I AM ALS's co-founder and dear friend, Sandra Aberbayan, let me be super clear. The lives of the people living with ALS are at stake. If we are made to wait for additional phase 3 trials, nearly everyone living today will have died by the time those trials are complete. Join me, join us, lean in, help us create a world where there are no more ALS widows. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Michael. I appreciate it. I appreciate being here and seeing all of my friends. Sorry. I usually break down at least once when I'm speaking, so hopefully this is it and I'm done with that. So, my name is Jenny Gore Dwyer. My husband, Pat Dwyer, was diagnosed with his ALS in 2005. He lived with the disease for 8 years. He had a slow progression, and we felt very lucky. But he, on the other hand, was like, I don't know if this is a blessing or a curse to live with ALS for that long. Our story started in Alaska. I was a cook on a boat, and he was the engineer on a boat that year. And we had a really, really great summer. And when the fishing season was over, I headed down to Seattle where my sister was living and lived with her. And then may or may not have moved in with Pat, but 6 months later we were married, so it's all good. We grew a business. We have 2 children, my daughter Brenna and our son Sean. Sean is now married to my lovely daughter-in-law Bree, and I have an 8-month-old granddaughter. So my story here today, I appreciate everybody who gave all the background on the FDA and all the work that has been done congressionally. So the way that my story kind of ties into that is that when Pat was diagnosed in 2005, there was nothing around. I mean, we had really no hope at all because there just weren't any drugs around. And as his disease progressed, as many people living with ALS, you get to the next point of your disease and you go, all right, well, it's not that bad. I mean, you know, I really guess I don't need the use of my hands and my arms because, you know, my wife and my kids can feed me, and it really was a family time that we enjoyed. And you know, as time goes on and you lose the use of your legs, you know, again, in the wheelchair, Pat had a great time in his wheelchair. We'd take off to Home Depot, and I'm like, wait for me. And but again, there was just nothing out there in the landscape. And as his disease progressed, early on, he decided he wasn't going to do an invasive vent. He decided that was his bottom line. And as a commercial fisherman, I don't know if you know many, but they love to talk. And his other bottom line was when he couldn't speak in real time anymore, he was going to be done. Unfortunately for us, that happened towards the end of his disease. I was still able to understand him as he spoke through his BiPAP machine, and could translate as to what he wanted. And he decided in Washington State we have palliative sedation, and he decided that was going to be his route. And when he got to the point in his disease that he decided he was done, we worked really hard to make that happen for him. And one of the main reasons that he made that decision was that he saw nothing in the future that was going to help him. And that was in 2013. Since that time, the landscape slowly started to change. And in the last 3 years since I Am ALS was founded by Sandra and Brian, things have sped up exponentially. And now there actually is hope. There's actually drugs out there that do work for people. There's actually politicians who care about ALS and who know what ALS is now. And it seems crazy that we have to legislate our way to a cure, but we are so much closer today than we were in 2005. It's incredible. So I just want to say thank you to everybody here who has made such a huge difference in this ALS world. For families like mine who were diagnosed and we didn't have that hope, this This is incredible. It's incredible, and I hope you all realize the amazing things that you have done to make this disease more visible, to make it public, and yes, to make it treatable and curable. So thank you very much.
Okay, my name's Mitzi Klingenberg, and I'm a mama bear. I'm Matt Klingenberg's mom. Matt's been very fortunate because he's been able to get Neurone, he's been in the first EAP, and he's been in the second EAP. We think it helps. He says it helps. So there you go, folks. Now the thing about this disease is that it makes me really mad. I would normally swear at this point, but I'm going to really try to hold off and behave. This disease is like no other disease I've ever been around. I'm a nurse. I was a nurse for 45 years. I've been in mental health. I've buried 3 out of 4 parents. I've helped bury a lot of friends and family. I've been through the works, folks. Nothing compares to ALS. It sucks. And I'm mad. And I'm a mama bear. And I'm going to tell you, we are never going to quit. We are going to search out institutions. We're going to find systems. We're going to find processes. And when they're not working for people with ALS, we're going to call them out, and we're going to call them out, and we're going to call them out until they change. Because we deserve better than what we've gotten and what we're getting. So this is one Mama Bear's promise, that we're not stopping. We're here to help, and we're going to do it. Thank you, and God bless you.
Hello. Some of you may know me. The others know me on the ALS website. I'm the funny, encouraging, bringing awareness, funny kind of guy. My name is Greg Hayden. Hope I was diagnosed 13 years ago. Funny this, let me tell you what I do on Facebook. I put the caregivers and spouses to a test. Well, a year ago, I dared them, when they're home alone, the caregiver or spouse, put the music on, do a little slow striptease, and dance naked in front of your pal. I got so many responses back, they said that was the best 15 minutes in a long time. But again, my 13 years, the first 10, there was nothing after. Nothing. Last 3 years, I am ALS, an organization that made a stand. We do have Neurone, AMX, 003, 5, and others. That is the breakthrough we need. We must keep fighting. So again, and mostly I'm 64. I pray for all the younger ones first. They haven't had a life yet. We need to give them a life. Us guys, we can grow old together, yeah. But again, thank you and keep fighting. Don't give up. If you see me on Facebook, I'll give you the finger. No, I'm kidding you.
I'm Juliet Taylor. I'm an ALS widow. This is my friend Sandra Lane. She's 6 months, 11 days. Sandra and I have become friends through this fight, like so many faces that I see out here. There's only existing friends and new friends to come. I wasn't going to speak, but I've been moved to speak just by everything I've heard here today. I'll be quick. I just want to share May is ALS Awareness Month. May is also 2 years ago. This week was my husband's 60th birthday. He turned 60. We planted a dogwood tree. 2 years ago next week he died at home. I was holding his hand. It was our second marriage. We were really, really happy. He was my happily ever after. He was the rest of my life, and he's gone. Here's our rings combined on my finger. I miss him every day. He just wanted me to be okay. He wasn't worried about himself, he was worried about me. And every day he said, I want you to be okay. And because of this community, I'm okay. This community has changed my life after his death. And for any of you who don't know I AM ALS, who aren't involved yet, please join us. The first 6 months of phone calls, I didn't say a word. And I would dial in and I think, they must think I'm so lame, I don't do anything. Just join us. At some point you'll be moved to act or not. And we just want you here with us. So please join us. Jeff was an ATF agent. He was not a veteran, but he was exposed to a lot of things in his career. He was on site at Oklahoma City bombing. He worked here in the White House, just a few blocks away, in a bipartisan manner on the National Security Council. He was so proud of that job. When he got diagnosed, he just said, we're gonna live, and we attacked life. We went to Canada with his wheelchair. We were sitting outside the hotel and he saw whitewater rafters and he said, I wanna do that. He couldn't walk anymore. I called a whitewater rafting company and I said, my husband can't walk. Will you take him? And they said, can we tie him in the boat? And he said, yeah. So we went down to the river and they strapped him in and off we went. That was every day with Jeff. A few months before he died, his daughter told us she was pregnant. And he didn't make it to see Sierra, my granddaughter, born. But I spoil that kid in his honor, and I always will. I will love that kid and any future grandchildren he has. And I just wish so much that he were here to meet her. And I try and honor him every day by the time I spend with her. But my point is, because I can't say this any better than anyone has, so my point is, please join us. I promise you it's fine to be silent. I promise you we just want you with us. And at some point you'll feel moved to take some action if you haven't already, or you may not, and just join the calls. I'm the co-chair of our community outreach committee. We meet every Wednesday at 1. There's so many committees here. There's so many things to do, and we would just love to have you, support you. And I can promise you that it's been a really important part of my healing, and this is a family. And I just see so many faces. I'm so happy to be here. Thank you, everybody, for what you brought to me.
To speak for my husband, Steve. He died about 6 months ago at 43. We have similar stories. We used to always say they're both cut from the same cloth. Steve was my second husband, but my soulmate. I knew the night I met him that was going to be the man I was going to marry. And a lot of people don't ever find their soulmate, so I was lucky. And then we got engaged. His health started to decline. He had a bad hip, and I remember we went to see doctors, and then, after seeing 5-6 different doctors, you finally get to that neurologist, get that diagnosis. And I remember I used to pray, I hope this is cancer or something else, just not ALS. And he kind of knew in the back of his head. He was a veteran, Marine, and also a federal officer, CBP, for 17 years, but he had also familial ALS. His mom had passed away at 40 when he was deployed in Cuba. He found out about it, and 3 months later she had died. It runs a lot in his family. He has that SOD1, very fast progressing, diagnosed in November 26, 2019, and almost made it to the 2-year mark. We were part of that Toferson trial, and I think it did help, but his progression was just so fast. And then COVID hit. Hopkins was like, forget it, we're not doing the trial anymore, we're dropping that. You have a choice to go to Boston or Cleveland. So we would take that monthly haul to Cleveland to get that procedure done. And it was not an easy procedure. It was a big needle in the back. As soon as he stopped the trial, he started to progress, and I think it did help a little bit. It just started to be too much, and then he passed probably within 2 months of stopping the trial. And he got to the point where his biggest fear was living like that glass coffin, and that's how it got at the end. He couldn't support his head. The times that he fell, we all know as caregivers, so he
like PSD after all of this, but he never complained, and he taught me a lot, and I would do it all over again. I've lived the best of my life, but I know the hardest of my life, and no one else should go through this. And I feel bad for his daughter and his grandchild, who will also have to face a decision of when to get tested, what to do. And we need better access to drugs. Steve was lucky that he was able to get into a clinical trial, but we need to get to the big pharma. We need to cut that red tape and all that bureaucracy. There's good stuff out there, and we need access to it. And even if it's just a 1% chance, then that's a 1% chance to let us make that decision to do it. And then for Steve, I know he was a big advocate, and looking back at his phone and all his old emails, I was shocked at all the emails and stuff that went out to different congressmen and things like that he was doing without me even knowing. But for Steve and for all those that we lost, we need to give them a voice. Thank you.
Good morning. One day there was a word, and that word was death. And though this community is dying, it is not consumed with death, but rather with advocating for a cure for ALS. On November 18th, 2019, I sat in the doctor's office with my partner, Dora G. Robertson. We were together for 23 years. The doctor said, "You have ALS." Brokenhearted, with no resources, no equipment, no real knowledge of the disease or how to manage it, we moved forward. 76 days later, I sat at the back of her funeral at her family's request. Family sits in the front. Guests sit in the back. A few weeks after her death, I came to I AM ALS. And today, I stand. I stand with a community who advocates for a world with no more ALS. I stand with the community that will not go home and quietly die. I stand with the community who stand and fight for themselves and for the future. Today, I stand with family. Thank you.
And Emily and Kathleen and all the volunteers yesterday. This really is a striking image that we have for ALS Awareness Month. And when you look my eyes up in these flags and see everyone, we have a lot of emotion. As we know in ALS, so emotions are a pendulum or maybe a roller coaster. We've seen them all, but we might have sadness and sorrow for the people we have lost ALS. But then the next minute, we may be laughing about a memory that we had with those people. Then we get angry and frustrated they have treatments are limited. But then our fierceness and our fighting spirit gets us back in the game to advocate for trial and make people aware of who they are, and have those moments of jubilation by passing the legislative act the path to the end. But today, when I look at these flags and all of you, my emotions of feeling love and kindness and relentless advocacy and the friendships that I have made, and finally I just want to say how grateful I am for all of you to be in this fight together. It really helps my mental health, and I hope it does yours. And thank you to my lovely bride here, who is my caregiver and gets me through every day. Thank you, everybody.
Totally unprepared for this. My name is Annie Quinn. I'm a physician with bulbar ALS. It's hard for me to speak and to breathe and to do my best. I thought to stand up because I felt like it was really important, since I am a doctor with this disease, to say something about how disappointed I am in the medical field and how it's not addressed this. The people, the patients are really, I feel, undeserved, not getting what they deserve. I was diagnosed in December, the day before my 50th birthday. I had my first ALS patient of my own that year, who lived only a half a mile from where I live. And she had rapid progressive. And being my first patient, it was an education, honestly. I'm a family physician. And she was diagnosed, or I diagnosed her during COVID, which was a nightmare. But I did as best as I could to try to get her to people that I thought could help her. And I sent her all over the place, even with COVID. And it was completely pointless. She got nothing. And that just pissed me off. And she died almost 9 months after I diagnosed her. It's awful. And then 2 months after she died is when I started getting symptoms. And it surprised me to know that there's also 2 other ladies in their 50s that live within a mile of me that have been diagnosed with ALS. I live in a very small town in Pennsylvania. That's just very shocking to have 4 ladies within a year, roughly the same age, being diagnosed with ALS. So since my diagnosis, I can't practice because of my breathing and my speech, but I've spent hours upon hours upon hours reading and researching and using anything I have up here in my experience to figure out if there's something else. I went and looked into all the clinical trials, and I think it's wonderful, and I definitely see that there's promise out there, but it's not going to be available for me or for many people right now. But I refuse to believe
that only pharmaceuticals are things that are going to help us. We know a lot about ALS. We know that nerve cells are dying, and we know how nerve cells work. During the time I'm researching, I'm looking at the function of nerve cells, what they need to actually function. And there's a lot out there that can help nerve cells function that have nothing to do with pharmaceuticals. This is something that I'm sort of shocked that the medical field and ALS specialists don't even discuss. Because there's a huge field of medicine out there that addresses how to prevent cell death, regenerative medicine. It's not naturopathic, I mean it is sort of, but it's an allopathic field of medicine, regenerative medicine. And there are lots and lots of treatments out there that help prevent cell death. None of this is being talked about, in my opinion, and I'm on the web 24/7 reading and researching and talking to as many people as possible. But fortunately, through those hours and hours and hours, I came across that. It wasn't the first thing you find when you Google. But there's some very intelligent MD, PhDs in regenerative medicine all over the country that are using very safe things that help prevent cell death. It has a lot to do with preventing aging, but that's the same thing, basically. And I just encourage people, it's hard for me to get up here and I'm not trying to push an agenda, but I just want to share the information because it's invaluable. I personally have implemented some of these things for myself in the last month because it took that long for me to actually look into it, come up with different approaches of things that I think would help my nerve cells function and not die. And I'm doing them. And what's interesting or amazing to me is when I first got diagnosed, as many of you ALS patients are familiar with the term, your FVC. It's one of the markers they watch for your lung function to say if you were going to end up on a ventilator or not. I started out at an FVC of 52%, and I was immediately on the ventilator all night and frequently throughout the day, unless I just sat and did nothing. And I just had a follow-up FVC, and I'm at 77%. Yeah, I feel that's amazing, and I was having a very hard time walking more because of my breathing, but I actually walked here today from my hotel 2 miles away. So I just wanted to stand up here, even though I'm nervous as shit, just come up here unprepared. I just want to come up to give hope because I feel like you never hear that. You never hear hope when you go to the doctor's office. And even at myself, I go to Hopkins. So I don't mean to criticize, but I had to argue with my ALS neurologist about this area of medicine that I think is critical and cutting edge, which could save so many people's lives, not just with ALS, but they're using it with Alzheimer's and Parkinson's and MS, and you name it. Neurodegenerative diseases is a huge area where they're doing this research. So I argued with him and he said, there's no evidence. Like, I'm evidence. I'm like, so screw you. Anyway, I just want to encourage anybody who's interested, feel free. I am part of I AM ALS. I've been off a bit this last month because I've been working so hard on looking into these things. But feel free to message me. I can give you links of different physicians. There's all kinds of webinars that they do. The panels are all MD PhDs. You know, they may not be an ALS neurologist, but honestly, that doesn't help me at all. I feel like these people are on the cutting edge of helping a lot of these diseases. It may not cure it, or maybe it will, who knows. It won't hurt it, that I can tell you. It's not toxic. It's not drugs. I'll give you one example. I'm doing peptide therapy. It's a injection type of treatment. And the type of peptide therapy I implemented is a growth hormone releasing hormone because they've done studies to show that growth hormone is severely deficient in ALS patients. But have they done trials? They did do a trial with growth hormone. That's not an appropriate approach to treat it, actually, because that shuts off your own production. But growth hormone releasing hormone makes you make your own. That can't hurt you to improve your growth hormone levels. This is something you would never even hear of at the ALS clinic. So that's just one example. So I hope I give some people some hope and encouragement. I don't want to give false hope, but I just feel like I was given this for a reason. Whether I can learn something new, share something new, I'll definitely do it because I would do it for my patients. I'd do it for myself, and I'd love to do it for all of you and anybody else you know. So God bless all of you, and thank you for this organization. It's the only organization that I really feel really, really, really cares, and I really appreciate that. So thank you.
I'll be quick, but feel the need to say something. This is my wife. She just passed away about 3 months ago. Feeding tube, speaking was going. Her forced vital capacity that this woman just spoke about was down close to 10%. And maybe a year and a half earlier than that, I remember us driving to a clinic and hearing about AMX0035 and the results. We were listening to the webinar live, and the hope it gave us was great, thinking, wow, we can try this. And then over the course of the next few months, we tried to get into 3 different trials, and we were refused for one reason or another. And we finally got her into an EAP version of the platform trial. That frankly was a little bit too late, and she was spinning down, and so 2 things that a lot of people have already mentioned. The hope is so important. I mean, it really did give her hope as she was going like this, and maybe there was something she could try. And the timing, we just can't afford to wait because it's too late for her, but hopefully not for others. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Lisa, and I am here because I lost my son. The last 3 years of his life, I was his caregiver. I made the promise to him, felt his first heartbeat, felt his first breath, and I was there to kiss that last breath and to feel that last heartbeat. We did not have the abilities to go into the clinicals. It progressed fairly quickly. He decided that once the medicines that we were using stopped working, that it was God's will. He was able to eat. He was able to drink. He was still able to talk. And then the end came very quickly, which is the way he wanted. He tried to fight. He was fighting so hard. He did not want to give up. He did not want to stop. He asked me if he could stop fighting, because he was so tired. As a mom, I wanted him to stay forever. You're not supposed to bury your children. The day that he left, I just held him. I kissed him. I stood there until that last beat. My heart was late. Prayer is that no other mother needs to bury their child with this disease. That we can find these treatments, cure, because everyone has a right to live. Thank you.
My name is Alan. My wife passed away from ALS, Parkinson's. My wife passed away from ALS and Parkinson's. This is their anniversary. A month ago, she passed away. It was hard for her. In August, she was a very vibrant person. There was a long journey between that and the ultimate finding out she had ALS on the 3rd of March. So from the 3rd of March, 12th of April, a real struggle. It takes its toll on her, it takes its toll on the family. If one thing positive came out of it, we've been looking for a way to volunteer our energies. And this is obviously it. There's no other way of doing it to honor her more than being part of the ALS volunteer system. So, I appreciate ALS and all they did for her. Hope and find technologies to help ALS victims in the future.
So, my name's Rachel, and my grandfather, I was born in '87. My grandfather passed away from ALS in 1986. He was 56 years old. My grandfather has 6 daughters. One is my mom, and my Aunt Linda Weimer Ferranti passed away from ALS, his daughter, when she was 56 years old in 2013. I was an honor guardsman in the Coast Guard in the military at the time and stationed here in DC, and I never got to say goodbye to her. I find it ironic that I found out about this event when I'm living here in DC again. And I just wanted to come up here and say that today would have been my Aunt Linda's 65th birthday. I find it ironic that this is happening today. There's a flag out there for her and my grandfather. So I just wanted to honor her by saying her name out loud here today.